A medieval peasant in 13th century England worked approximately 150 days per year. The rest was Sundays, religious holidays, and harvest festivals. Economist Juliet Schor calculated that a serf, a person we consider among the most oppressed in human history, had more leisure time than you do. You work 250 days per year. You have 2 weeks of vacation if you're lucky. You answer emails at midnight. You check Slack on Sundays. The serf was bound to the land. You are bound to the paycheck. The serf knew he was trapped. He could see the chains. You cannot see yours. They are woven into mortgages, car payments, insurance premiums, and the steady hum of anxiety that wakes you at 3 a.m. You were told that hard work leads to freedom. But what if hard work is the mechanism that keeps you trapped? In 1905, a German sociologist named Max Weber published a book that would shape how the Western world thinks about work. The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism argued that hard work was not merely practical, it was moral. Calvinist theology had taught that worldly success was a sign of God's favor. To work hard was to be virtuous. To be idle was to be damned. Weber was describing a belief system, not endorsing it. But the belief system spread far beyond any church. Benjamin Franklin codified it into phrases that every American child still memorizes. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. A penny saved is a penny earned. There are no gains without pains. These maxims sound like common sense. They are actually ideology. A set of ideas designed to make you behave in ways that benefit others. Consider what Franklin was really saying. Your poverty is your fault. If you are not wealthy, you did not work hard enough. You did not save enough. You did not sacrifice enough. The system is fine. You are the problem. This message has been repeated so relentlessly for so long that most people cannot imagine questioning it. Hard work equals success. Success equals virtue. Failure equals laziness. The formula is burned into the American brain, but the formula is a lie, and the data prove it. Americans work more than almost any other developed nation. The average American worker puts in 1,191 hours per year. Germans work 1,249 hours, 422 fewer hours annually. The French work 1,490 hours. Even the Japanese, famous for their work ethic, work fewer hours than Americans. If hard work created wealth, Americans would be the richest people on earth. They are not. Germany has higher median wealth per adult than the United States. So does France. So do Australia, Belgium, and Canada. Americans work harder and have less to show for it. How is this possible? Because hard work does not create wealth for the worker. Hard work creates wealth for whoever owns the system within which the work occurs. The harder you work, the more wealth you generate for someone else. This is not a new discovery. The ancient Egyptians understood it perfectly. The workers who built the pyramids at Giza were not slaves as Hollywood depicted. Archaeological evidence shows they were paid laborers, fed, housed, and compensated in bread and beer. They believed they were doing sacred work, honoring the pharaoh, securing their place in the afterlife. They worked extraordinarily hard. They moved 2.3 million stone blocks, some weighing 80 tons using copper tools and human muscle. They believed their labor was virtuous. The pharaoh got a tomb that has lasted 4,500 years. The workers got bread, and then they died anonymous, owning nothing. The mechanism has not changed. Only the justification has. In 1972, psychologist Walter Mischel conducted the Stanford marshmallow experiment. Children were offered 1 marshmallow immediately, or 2 marshmallows if they waited 15 minutes. The study claimed that children who delayed gratification became more successful adults. For decades, this study was used to explain poverty. Poor people were poor because they lacked self-control. They could not delay gratification. They ate the marshmallow. Their poverty was a character flaw, not a systemic outcome. The study has since been debunked. Researchers at NYU found that when they controlled for socioeconomic background, the marshmallow effect nearly vanished. Children from wealthy families waited because they had learned that promises would be kept. Children from poor families ate the marshmallow because experience had taught them that the second marshmallow might never come. The poor were not lacking self-control. They were making rational decisions based on a system that had already failed them. But the damage was done. For 40 years, the Marshmallow Study justified policies that blamed individuals for systemic extraction. Cut welfare. The poor need to learn discipline. Reduce unemployment benefits. People need motivation to work. Eliminate minimum wage increases. Workers need to earn success through effort. The lie is elegant. It transforms systemic theft into personal failure. It makes the victim blame themselves. And it ensures that the hardest workers never ask the obvious question. If I am producing wealth, why am I not receiving it? That question has an answer. And the answer reveals the true architecture of the paycheck trap. On January 5th, 1914, Henry Ford announced that he would pay his assembly line workers $5 per day, more than double the prevailing wage. Newspapers called him a socialist. Competitors called him insane. Workers lined up by the thousands outside the Highland Park plant. Desperate for a job, history remembers Ford as a generous visionary. History is wrong. Ford's own accountants had calculated something that he never publicized. The average Ford worker produced $35 worth of value per day. Ford was paying them $5. The remaining $30 went to Ford. The $5 day was not generosity, it was strategy. Ford needed workers who could afford to buy the cars they built. He needed workers who would not quit, would not unionize, would not cause trouble. $5 was precisely enough to create loyalty without sharing real wealth. This is the mechanism that operates in every workplace, in every industry, in every country. You are paid less than you produce. The difference is called profit. Karl Marx described this 150 years ago. He called it surplus value, the gap between what a worker creates and what a worker receives. You do not need to be a Marxist to understand the mathematics. You only need to look at your own paycheck. The average American worker generates approximately $65 in value per hour for their employer. The average American wage is approximately $20 per hour. The difference, $37 per hour, flows upward to executives, to shareholders, to owners. Over a 2,000-hour work year, that gap equals $74,000 extracted from each worker every year. Over a 40-year career, $296 million is taken from you. This is not speculation. This is the documented difference between productivity and compensation. Amazon provides a modern case study. In 2022, Amazon's fulfillment center workers generated approximately $400,000 in revenue per employee. Those workers walk 15 miles per shift. They are monitored by algorithms that track their movements to the second. They urinate in bottles because bathroom breaks hurt their productivity metrics. They work and they work hard. And they remain poor because hard work was never the point. Extraction is the point. This pattern is not new. After the Civil War, 4 million enslaved people were freed. They owned nothing. No land, no tools, no capital. They needed to survive. Southern landowners offered a solution: sharecropping. Former slaves would work the land and receive a share of the crop. It sounded like freedom. It functioned like slavery. The landowner provided land, seeds, tools, and housing, all on credit. At harvest, the sharecropper's share was calculated after deducting these debts. The mathematics were designed to ensure the debt was never cleared. A sharecropper could work 18-hour days, could bring in a record harvest, could do everything right, and still owe more at the end of the year than at the beginning. The harder they worked, the more cotton they produced, the richer the landowner became. The sharecropper remained trapped, not because they were lazy, because the system was designed to extract wealth, not distribute it. Your paycheck operates on the same principle. You produce value. Your employer captures most of it. You receive enough to survive and return to work tomorrow. If you work harder, you produce more value. For them, your increased effort increases their profit. Your reward is exhaustion. Ford understood this in 1914. Amazon understands it today. The plantation owners understood it in 1870. The only people who do not understand it are the workers. And there is a reason for that. The system has built a mechanism that ensures your increased earnings never translate to increased wealth. It is called lifestyle inflation. In 1913, a comic strip appeared in American newspapers. It was called Keeping Up with the Joneses, and it followed a family obsessed with matching their neighbor's lifestyle. New curtains, a better car, a bigger house. The family stretched their finances to maintain appearances. The comic was satire. It became prophecy. The phrase entered the language because it described something Americans immediately recognized. The compulsion to match, to never fall behind, was already embedded in the culture. What few understood was that this compulsion was being deliberately engineered. In the 1920s, Alfred Sloan transformed General Motors using a concept he called planned obsolescence. Unlike Henry Ford, who built the Model T to last, Sloan designed cars to become psychologically outdated. Each year, GM released new models with cosmetic changes, different colors, new chrome, updated tail fins. The old car still functioned perfectly, but it looked old. It signaled that its owner had fallen behind. Sloan was not selling transportation, he was selling status, and status, unlike a car, can never be satisfied. This model spread to every industry. Fashion seasons accelerated from 2 to 52 per year. Technology companies released new phones annually with marginal improvements. Furniture that once lasted generations now falls apart in years, designed not for durability but for replacement. The system does not want you to be satisfied. Satisfaction ends consumption. The system needs you perpetually dissatisfied, perpetually reaching, perpetually spending, and so your raises disappear. You earn $50,000 and live in an apartment. You earn $70,000 and move to a nicer apartment. You earn $100,000 and buy a house. You earn $150,000 and buy a bigger house, a better car, private school for the children. At each level, your expenses rise to consume your income. This is not weakness. This is design. The data confirm the pattern. A 2023 survey found that 78% of Americans earning over $100,000 per year live paycheck to paycheck. They earn more than 90% of the country. They have nothing saved. Their lifestyle expanded to match their income, then exceeded it. Credit makes this possible. Credit is the tool that allows you to live beyond your means today and pay for it with your labor tomorrow. It converts future freedom into present consumption. It ensures that no matter how much you earn, you remain dependent on the next paycheck. The Romans understood this mechanism 2,000 years ago. Bread and circuses, the poet Juvenal wrote, describing how the emperors maintained control. Feed the population, entertain them, keep them distracted. A citizen watching gladiators does not question the empire. A citizen with a full stomach does not revolt. Modern bread is cheap consumer goods. Televisions, smartphones, fast fashion. Modern circuses are streaming services, social media, professional sports. You are fed, you are entertained. You do not question why you work 50 hours a week and own nothing. The lifestyle trap ensures that every increase in income is captured by increased consumption. You run faster. The treadmill accelerates. The distance to wealth never shrinks. But even if you escape the lifestyle trap, even if you lived frugally, saved aggressively, avoided every status purchase, there is another mechanism waiting. One that ensures workers can never accumulate what owners accumulate, because workers earn differently than owners. And that difference is the heart of the trap. In 1397, Giovanni di Bicci de' Medici opened a bank in Florence. 600 years later, the Medici name still echoes through history, not because they worked hard, but because they owned. The Medici did not labor in fields. They did not craft goods with their hands. They lent money. They collected interest. They purchased land, art, and political influence. Their wealth compounded across generations, while the workers of Florence lived and died in the same poverty their grandparents had known. This is the fundamental divide that the paycheck trap obscures. There are two ways to earn money. You can work for it, or you can own things that generate it. Workers trade time for wages. Owners collect income while they sleep. Consider the mathematics. A nurse works a 12-hour overnight shift. She earns $45 per hour, $540 for the night. She is exhausted. Her feet ache. She will need to recover before her next shift. Her landlord owns the building where she rents an apartment. He collected Bama Allen $800 in rent this month from her unit alone. He owns 30 units. He collected $54,000 this month. He did not work a single hour. The nurse's rent check arrived while he slept. The nurse earned $540 by sacrificing her time and health. The landlord earned $54,000 by owning a building. Whose position would you rather occupy? Now multiply this across the economy. In 2021, institutional investors, BlackRock, Blackstone, Invitation Homes, purchased approximately 25% of all single-family homes sold in America. They did not buy these homes to live in them. They bought them to rent to people who could not afford to buy. Every month, millions of Americans transfer a portion of their paychecks to corporations that own their shelter. The workers labor, the corporations collect, the workers remain tenants, the corporations accumulate more property. This is not a market failure. This is the market functioning exactly as designed. Capital flows to where it generates the highest return. Housing generates returns. Workers are the source of those returns. Japan provides a cautionary tale of where this leads. In the 1980s, Japan was celebrated for its work ethic. The salaryman became an icon. Dedicated employees who worked 80-hour weeks, slept at the office, sacrificed everything for their companies. They were the hardest working labor force on earth. Then the asset bubble burst in 1991, and for the next 30 years, despite all that work, Japanese wages stagnated. Real income in 2020 was virtually unchanged from 1990. An entire generation worked themselves to exhaustion and ended up exactly where they started. Meanwhile, those who owned assets, land, stocks, bonds, saw their wealth preserved and eventually grow. The workers ran in place, the owners stood still and moved forward. The salaryman's mistake was believing that effort would be rewarded. Effort is rewarded, but the reward goes to whoever owns the system in which the effort occurs. You can work 80 hours a week. You can sacrifice your health, your relationships, your youth. And if you do not own assets, you will end up like the Japanese salaryman, exhausted, aging, and no wealthier than when you began. But even this understates the trap, because the system does not merely take your money. It takes something far more valuable, something you can never earn back. In 1930, the economist John Maynard Keynes made a prediction. In an essay titled Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren, he calculated that by 2030, technological progress would allow a 15-hour work week. Productivity would rise so dramatically that humans would face a new problem: too much leisure. We are now 5 years from Keynes's deadline. The average American works 47 hours per week. What happened? Keynes was not wrong about productivity. Since 1930, productivity has increased by over 400%. A worker today produces in 1 hour what a 1930 worker produced in an entire day. The efficiency gains Keynes predicted arrived exactly as he foresaw. But the time savings did not go to workers. They went to owners. In 1926, Henry Ford implemented the 40-hour workweek at his factories. He was not motivated by compassion. Ford had discovered that workers who labored more than 40 hours made mistakes. They damaged equipment. They injured themselves. 40 hours was the point of maximum extraction, the most productivity that could be squeezed from a human body without diminishing returns. That calculation was made nearly a century ago. Technology has transformed every aspect of work since then. Yet the 40-hour week remains. The number that represented maximum extraction in 1926 has become the unchangeable baseline of modern employment. Productivity doubled. Working hours stayed the same. Where did the time go? It went into profit. Every hour of increased productivity that was not returned to workers as reduced hours was captured as increased output. You work the same hours your grandfather worked. You produce twice as much. Your employer collects the difference. The Luddites understood this in 1811. When textile workers in Nottingham began destroying mechanical looms, history recorded them as ignorant technophobes, fools who could not see that technology meant progress. This is a lie told by the victors. The Luddites were skilled craftsmen. They understood the technology perfectly. What they also understood was who would benefit from it. The looms would increase productivity. The factory owners would capture that increase. The workers would be displaced, impoverished, or forced to labor for lower wages in worse conditions. They were not anti-technology. They were anti-extraction, and they were correct. The textile factories generated enormous wealth. That wealth flowed to the mill owners who built mansions, purchased political power, and founded dynasties. The workers who operated the machines lived in slums, died young, and left nothing to their children. Technology has never liberated workers. Technology has only changed the form of their bondage. Today you carry a device in your pocket that connects you to the sum of human knowledge. It has not freed you. It has extended your working hours. You answer emails at dinner. You take calls on vacation. You are never truly off the clock because the clock is now inside your pocket. The average American now spends 11 hours per day interacting with screens. Much of that time generates value for social media companies, for advertisers, for data brokers. Your attention is harvested and sold. Even your leisure is monetized. But time stolen is only one mechanism of the trap. There is another, one that does not merely take your present, but mortgages your future. It binds you to the system more effectively than any chain. In colonial America, a ship captain named Jonathan Forward ran a profitable business. He did not trade goods. He traded people. Forward transported English workers to the colonies under indenture contracts. The workers could not afford passage, so they signed agreements. 7 years of labor in exchange for transport to the New World. During those 7 years, they could be bought, sold, beaten, and forbidden from marrying. They were not slaves. Their bondage had an end date, but the distinction was academic while they served. Between 1620 and 1775, approximately 300,000 indentured servants arrived in America. They built the colonial economy with their labor. Few accumulated any wealth. Most finished their service with nothing but their freedom. And freedom without resources is merely the liberty to starve. The indenture system was eventually abandoned. But the principle, binding workers to future labor through debt, never disappeared. It evolved. In 1989, a company called Fair Isaac Corporation introduced a 3-digit number that would reshape American life, the FICO score. Before FICO, lending was personal. A banker evaluated your character, your community ties, your handshake. After FICO, lending became algorithmic. Your worthiness was calculated to 3 digits. That number determined whether you could buy a home, rent an apartment, lease a car, or get a job. The credit score is presented as a neutral measure of responsibility. It is actually a measure of profitable indebtedness. The way to build credit is to borrow money and pay interest. A person who has never borrowed, who has lived within their means, paid cash, accumulated savings, has no credit score at all. The system rewards debt. It punishes independence, and in 2005 the system ensured that one form of debt would become truly inescapable. The Bankruptcy, Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act made student loans virtually impossible to discharge in bankruptcy. You can gamble away a fortune and declare bankruptcy. You can run up credit cards on luxury goods and walk away, but student loans follow you until death. A 22-year-old who borrows $50,000 for education is not making a financial decision. They are signing an indenture contract. They are binding their future labor to creditors for 10, 20, sometimes 30 years. If they cannot pay, they cannot escape. The debt grows, interest accumulates, the collar tightens. 43 million Americans currently carry student loan debt. Total outstanding balance, $1.77 trillion. This is not education financing. This is the largest indenture system in human history. The genius of modern debt is that it feels like choice. No one forces you to borrow. You sign voluntarily. You accept the terms. And so you blame yourself when the payments consume your paycheck, when you cannot afford a home, when you work a job you hate because you cannot afford to quit. The indentured servant in 1650 knew he was trapped. The contract was explicit. The term was defined. The modern debtor does not see the contract because the contract is the entire economy. Housing requires debt. Education requires debt. Transportation requires debt. Survival requires debt. You are free to choose which master holds your indenture. You are not free to choose freedom. But perhaps you think the debt is temporary, you will pay it off, you will save, you will retire in comfort. This is the final illusion, and it may be the cruelest one of all. On a winter day in 1963, workers at the Studebaker automobile plant in South Bend, Indiana, received news that would destroy their futures. The company was closing, and the pension fund, the retirement security they had worked decades to earn, was bankrupt. Over 4,000 workers lost everything. Men who had labored 30 years on the assembly line discovered their pensions were worth pennies on the dollar. Some received nothing at all. They were too old to start over, too young to die, and too broke to survive. Studebaker was not unique. It was prophetic. In 1975, 88% of private sector workers with retirement plans had defined benefit pensions. Their employers guaranteed a specific monthly payment for life. The company bore the risk. The worker had security. Today, that number has collapsed to 15%. The pensions did not disappear naturally. They were replaced by a financial instrument that shifted all risk from corporations to workers. That instrument was the 401k. In 1978, a benefits consultant named Ted Benner discovered a loophole in the tax code. Section 401, paragraph K, allowed employees to defer compensation into tax-sheltered accounts. Benner realized this could be used for retirement savings. He created the first 401k plan as a supplement to traditional pensions. Corporations saw something else, an escape route. If workers saved for their own retirement, companies no longer needed to fund pensions. The guaranteed payment for life, the obligation that had bankrupted Studebaker, could be eliminated. Within 2 decades, the 401k had transformed from a supplement into a replacement. The pension era was over. The 401k is marketed as empowerment. You control your retirement. You make the investment decisions. You are the master of your financial destiny. This is the same logic that calls a prisoner free because he chooses which corner of his cell to sleep in. The mathematics reveal the trap. If you save $500 per month for 40 years at a 7% annual return, you will accumulate approximately $1.2 million. This sounds like wealth. Now apply inflation. At 3% annual inflation, that $1.2 million will have the purchasing power of roughly $400,000 in today's dollars. Withdraw 4% annually, the standard safe withdrawal rate, and you have $16,000 per year. You worked 40 years to earn $1,333 per month. This assumes everything goes perfectly. No job losses, no medical emergencies, no market crashes, no years where you could not contribute. The reality is grimmer. The median 401k balance for Americans aged 55-64 is $89,716. At a 4% withdrawal rate, that provides $3,588 per year, less than $300 per month. This is not retirement. This is poverty with extra steps. 50% of Americans have less than $10,000 saved for retirement. They will work until they cannot work. Then they will depend on Social Security, family, or charity. They followed the rules. They worked hard. The system failed them anyway. In 1834, England passed the Poor Law Amendment Act. It established workhouses for those who could not support themselves, the elderly, the sick, the destitute. Conditions were deliberately harsh. The message was clear. Poverty is shameful. The poor deserve punishment. The workhouses are gone. The philosophy remains. When you cannot retire, it is your fault. You did not save enough. You did not invest wisely. You did not work hard enough. The system that extracted your labor for 40 years bears no responsibility. And that is the final truth of the paycheck trap. In 1602, a group of Dutch merchants created something unprecedented. The Dutch East India Company, the Verenigde de Oostindische Compagnie, was the world's first publicly traded corporation. It issued shares. Anyone could buy ownership. For the first time in history, ordinary people could participate in wealth that had previously belonged only to kings and aristocrats. The VOC became the most valuable company in human history. At its peak, it was worth $7.9 trillion in today's dollars, more than Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google combined. It paid dividends of 18% annually for nearly 200 years. The Dutch merchants who bought those shares became wealthy beyond imagination. The workers who sailed VOC ships who loaded cargo, who died of scurvy and disease in distant ports. They remained poor, they worked harder than any shareholder, they risked more, they received almost nothing. The lesson is not subtle. Ownership creates wealth. Labor does not. John D. Rockefeller understood this perfectly. He did not become the richest American by working hard. He became rich by owning Standard Oil, while others worked for it. Every barrel of oil refined by a Standard Oil worker generated profit that flowed to Rockefeller. He captured the surplus value of thousands of workers across decades. "I would rather earn 1% of 100 people's efforts," Rockefeller allegedly said, "than 100% of my own efforts." This is the insight that separates those who escape the paycheck trap from those who remain inside it. You cannot work your way to wealth, you can only own your way there. The trap is designed to prevent this. Every mechanism we have examined, wage extraction, lifestyle inflation, the asset divide, time robbery, debt bondage, retirement illusions, serves one purpose: to ensure workers remain workers, to ensure that labor never accumulates capital, to ensure that each generation begins again at zero, selling time for money, while owners compound wealth across centuries. History shows three paths out of this trap. The first path is ownership. If you cannot beat the system, join it. Buy assets that generate income. Own stocks in the companies that extract wealth. Purchase property that collects rent. Become, however modestly, an owner rather than purely a worker. This path is real but narrow. It requires surplus income to invest. Surplus the system is designed to prevent. It requires financial knowledge the system does not teach. It requires decades of discipline, while the entire economy pressures you to consume. Most who attempt this path fail. Some succeed. The mathematics favor the patient and the fortunate. The second path is exodus. Leave the system. Find or create spaces where extraction is less efficient. The American frontier served this purpose for a century. Free land for those willing to work it. Today, geographic arbitrage offers a shadow of this option. Remote work from low-cost countries. Digital income spent in economies where the dollar stretches further, but the frontier closed. The digital loopholes are closing too. Governments coordinate. Tax authorities share information. The spaces outside the system shrink each year. The third path is the one that history records most vividly. Collapse. When extraction becomes unbearable, when the middle class is sufficiently hollowed, when enough people realize the rules were written to ensure their failure, systems break. The French aristocracy did not voluntarily share wealth. The Russian Tsar did not reform out of kindness. Systems change when they are forced to change, usually through upheaval that destroys wealth for everyone before rebuilding begins. This path is not an escape, it is a catastrophe. Those who live through it do not celebrate. They survive if they are lucky. Now consider what approaches. Artificial intelligence and automation are accelerating faster than any previous technological revolution. Within decades, perhaps sooner, machines will perform most tasks that humans currently do for wages. Driving, analyzing, writing, diagnosing, manufacturing, all are being automated. When human labor becomes obsolete, what happens to humans who have nothing to sell but labor? The optimists imagine a leisure society. The realists see a new feudalism, a world where those who own the machines collect all wealth, and those who own nothing become superfluous, not exploited, irrelevant. The medieval serf from our opening worked 150 days per year because the economy could only extract 150 days of value from him. The modern worker works 250 days because the economy can extract 250 days. What happens when the economy needs 0 days? You were told that hard work leads to success. This was never true. Hard work leads to extraction. Success requires ownership. And the window to acquire ownership is closing. The paycheck trap is not broken. It is functioning exactly as designed. The question is whether you will recognize the walls before they finish closing in. The medieval serf could see his chains. Can you see yours?